Welcome to the Big Tech Investigation Lab session here at the Harmony Hotel studio in Nosara, Costa Rica. My name is María Teresa Ronderos. I'm the director of the Centro Latinoamericano de Investigación, Periodística CLIP, and I will be talking with Ana Bejarano, an attorney with expertise in freedom of expression and protection of journalists. She is a founding partner of El 20, a freedom of expression organization. Hi, Ana. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for this invitation, María Teresa.
Ana, I wanted to talk a little bit about a case that you know well. Let us start from the beginning. So, telecom operators decide unilaterally which apps they give for free to their clients. How does this practice violate the net neutrality?
Okay, so the first thing is to explain that the concept of free is a concept that is being used in the telecom market as an advantage for users. But it's important to know that it's not free for two main reasons. One, you always pay for a cell phone and for the services that you have. So it's not free, it's included in what you pay. And also you are also paying with your data, which is being profiled. So companies sell it as free and as an advantage, but they have an enormous benefits that we don't know about. So it's not actually free. But this is obviously a very important hook in the market, and people are buying plans, digital plans or cell phone plans based on those free services. And those free services are usually, and this is like the norm of the market in the whole world, tied to very big tech companies, to the services and platforms of those companies. So it's mainly, for example, in Colombia and Latin America, is Meta, which has Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook. And those apps are the most used by users of the cell phone services. And it's a way of directing the user of seeing those apps as the internet. You might know the case of Myanmar, when Myanmar had the genocide against the Rohingya people. These people only knew internet as Facebook. They couldn't know anything around Facebook, just Facebook, because this was granting them the access to the internet. And this poses enormous questions about how people relate to the internet, because they relate to it only through these apps. And I think that's a new dilemma, commercial and constitutional dilemma, that has to be addressed everywhere.
Yeah, and now that you mentioned the Rohingya case, the whistleblower that wrote The Careless People, she talks about how she was warning internally her bosses at Facebook, saying, look, this is going to be terrible because it's getting too polarized. We're letting a lot of disinformation grow and hatred grow, and this is going to end in massacre. And they didn't pay attention, and it ended in a massacre. Why is net neutrality important for democracies, Anna?
Net neutrality is the right to access an internet, to a free, open internet. So this means you have the right of going in the web and looking for what you need with your own criteria. This is massively discriminated and violated against, because most of the people access, or a lot of people in Latin America access only through these free apps. So they don't have the right of accessing freely to the internet. This relates directly to democracies. It's not a first world problem. And that is one of the things that people tend to say about this. This problem directly addresses, for example, electoral disinformation or health issue disinformation. This becomes a problem for the most vulnerable. Because if you only have access to Facebook, if you only have access to WhatsApp, you are going to be much more a victim of this information, because you cannot check what you get through those apps. You get a disinformation through WhatsApp and you think that's true. You cannot click on any links. You cannot open the web. You cannot see for yourself. And this has already had effects in Brazil, in Argentina, in Colombia, for example, in the peace process. The referendum was completely tied to disinformation tactics for the people that were against the peace process. So it's hard to make people understand why this is not a problem of California people in the United States. It's a problem for all of us.
Yeah, it's a problem of people who cannot pay anything else. Exactly. So they pay the basic service, and it comes with this sort of obligation to have just WhatsApp or whatever it is. And then, of course, they take your data, they feed you misinformation, and then you think it's all very happy and free.
Exactly.
So you led a lawsuit against a law that actually does this, that allows telecoms in Colombia to give these free apps. Why don't you tell me a little bit of a story? Why did you decide to do this lawsuit? Wasn't this like a little bit of a quixotic exercise to reach for the stars and lead such a difficult lawsuit against very powerful companies?
Well, I think María Teresa Ronderos knows a little bit about this type of ventures. I think, well, I have to give credit. Emanuel Vargas, my partner in El 20, he had the idea. He is a very trained person in this matter, and he's studying this matter, and he proposed that we should look into it. And we did, and we presented different arguments before the Constitutional Court in 2021. 3 years later, the court hadn't decided. It is one of the 10 cases that has been longest in the time of the court since its existence. And finally, the court decided to grant us the reason. They said the law should be struck down and zero rating shouldn't be allowed. We still don't know the content of the decision because it was only made public by a statement, and this caused a lot of disinformation around it. But we think one of the groundbreaking things of this case, and we hope it really expands through Latin America, is that it starts signaling that internet is a human right, because it's a way of accessing your life, everything. So it should be treated as a right by states, by private organizations, by the users. They shouldn't be accepting like crumbles of internet. They should be demanding, I want the whole internet, and this is important for my life, for my family, for my community. So I think it's going to be a groundbreaking decision when we get to know it, but it definitely showed that we in Latin America are not prepared to have these discussions. We still have a lot of obstacles carrying out this type of litigation.
There was a very strong reaction against it. I think it's obvious why, but at the same time, you investigated later how this worked, how this massive attack against you guys worked. It came from social networks, it came from the media. What were your findings after you investigated this?
I have to confess that initially we did think that it was a very organized reaction because you're touching a lot of important interests. There's still no way to find out what are the dealings that are between the big techs and the telcos regarding zero rating. We don't know. They haven't answered callings from civil society to say what are you getting, literally getting out of it. But it was interesting to see that it was more, and we did this thanks to Cazadores de Fake News, which is a very important organization that is searching how fake news works. And it was more due to a vacío informativo. It was just people have cognitive limitations. They don't know this is an issue. They don't know this could be something that is important for them. And because there is no information, it was filled with a lot of mistakes and a lot of lies about our organization, our intentions, and how it will work out. We tried to also find out how it worked in other countries like Chile, India, that have the same decisions, either judicially or administrative. They have prohibited zero rating. And it wasn't as viral as ours. I think it was also a part that perhaps because I write an op-ed and I have like a public persona, I was a more visible target. And also just plain polarization in Colombia that is being one of the most effective ways of silencing people, and especially public women. Public feminine voices are being dragged through the mud. And I think that's what happened. And it's unfortunate, not just for me, but also because it distracted the attention of what we were looking for. But I think the happy ending is people are now talking about it. How does internet work in my phone? Why do I have these free apps? Are they really free? And if we could serve as just starters of the conversation, I think that's a win. As an observer of public opinion, and you've been a journalist for such a long time, and seen how themes and issues are being inserted in public discourse in Colombia, what advice would you give people trying to make people think about the internet? Like all type of people, not just certain niche opinions. It's important that people from, especially low-income people, see this as an issue for them. How do you think we could do that?
I think it's a hard question, but I do think that I would ask people in general to be critical and to think, because not so marveled with the wonders of the internet. Oh my God, I can speak for free on the phone forever. I can see my children in the other part of the world. That all is fine and it's beautiful. But then also think about it and think and be critical, especially about information that reaches you, and say, is this true? And try really, even with your neighbors, even with your friends, to try and discuss these things, and not, like we say in Spanish, not eat the things like with a lump, but try to, really chew on them and have discussions in the family of, okay, how is this affecting our children? Why do the children are spending so much time with these games? Why are so many powerful journalists defending the big companies all the time? Why are they so rich and the media are all so poor? So some questions that should be, asked, and I think ordinary people can ask a lot of questions about it.
Yeah, and also one last thing, because those interests are so important and closely tied. How to talk to journalism about conflicts of interest that they might not even see due to their closeness to telcos and their use of social media. They might not be even interested in investigating this matter.
Yeah, I think that we are in a moment in Latin America. You would use Dickens' word of the best of times and the worst of times, because you have amazing investigative journalism that is really investigating journalism, like Núcleo, for example, in Brazil, that's solely investigating the big tech, and many other platforms that are really putting this out there. But at the same time, there is a lot of people are living mostly on opinion. So people don't realize that they're not given information, like hard information with evidence. And I think a lot of journalists have become very lazy, and all they do is give opinions all day without really realizing not even what's the evidence of things they are actually repeating. And what you say, much less conflicts of interest. Some of them, even do public relations for some of these companies, and they think they can also be independent, quote unquote, journalists. So I think there is a lot of it's a moment where massive opinion journalism is too opinionated, and it has very little evidence to actually dig and find out about what's happening. The Big Tech Investigation Lab is organized by Centro Latinoamericano de Investigación Periodística CLIP and Núcleo Jornalism from Brazil. The event is sponsored by Luminate and Harmony Project.